All right, so I'm going to show you guys how to do domain and range when you're given a graph. Okay, so you've got these tools here in the middle to kind of visualize to show you how to notate it. Now, normally when we talk about domain and range, we're referring to what is the limit of my function or relation going in the left and right direction, but also what is the limit going in the down and up direction. So first, to kind of just review, in the IXL assignment, or the first part where you learn about domain and range, when we refer to domain, it's all the x values. All the x values. So if this is my problem, it's asking me what is the domain of this relation, which is just a list of coordinate pairs or ordered pairs, I literally just am going to list out what are the x values for the domain. So here I can see that I've got -6, 3, 6, and 3. So -6, comma, -6, comma, 3, comma, 6. Now, if you notice 3 repeats, if it repeats, I don't need to type it. Okay. So here again, what's my domain? Again, it's just the x values. So -17, comma, 18, 17 repeats, so I don't need to write it. Let's see, the next one asks us about the range. Now it's going to ask us about the range. So now I've got points on a graph and it's asking about the range. Well, the range again is the y values. So the numbers or values I want to refer to are on the y-axis, because again, the range is the y values. Okay, so up and down this line, those are the numbers I want to look at. Not this line, not the one that's going across. So it's important to realize, okay, I'm thinking about range. Look at the line that has to do with y when I'm looking for those values. So let's start with this point. Range of this point, -5. Range of this point, -1 at here, comma, -1. I go to the next point. The range is at 2. I go to this point. The range is 4. Not 1, but 4, because again, I'm paying attention to the y values. Okay, now the range with points. They're just listed out, right? I have 15, -19, 20, and 9. I'm literally just listing out the y values. Okay, now let's go over to the graph and show how this applies. Now here, what's different is in those other examples, you either just had some points or you had like dots, right? You listed out some finite numbers, whereas this is a line. It's continuous along some interval. Okay, starting at one number and going to another, it's just a line that just keeps going. Okay, so here we're going to notate this differently. Here we're going to say, let's start with domain, which again refers to the x values. So we're looking at how far to the left does this function go and how far to the right does this function go. So now let's start on the left. Again, we're talking about domain. At this point right here, I see a closed circle, a solid circle. Notice there's a difference between this circle and that one. This one's solid, this one's open. It's not filled in. So on the left, if I see a closed circle, I'm going to grab this bracket, the top bracket here, because it closes it in on the left side. But when I go to the right side, I'm going to use a parenthesis because there's an open circle. So anytime you see an open circle as your farthest limit, you're going to use a parenthesis. All other times, you're going to use a square bracket. Now, again, I told you that the domain is the x values, right? So which of these axes is the x values? Is it the one going left and right or the one going up and down? It's the one going from left to right. So those are the numbers I want to pay attention to. So here, we're starting at this point on the left. Always start on the left side or the negative side. Always start on the negative side. Or I should say start on the lowest value side. That's another way to say it. At this point, the x value is -11. Yes, if I go over this way, the y value is 4, but I don't want the y value. I want the x value right now. So the x value is -11. What I'm going to do is, because it's a closed circle, I'm going to start with this bracket here like I put on the graph. I'm going to type that, and then put negative 11. Comma, now you're going to go to the right limit all the way to the right, and it's an open circle, so that means I'm going to put a parenthesis this time. And now the x value is 11. I'm not going to put 1 because, again, I'm talking about the x values for a domain. And then parenthesis. Now the range. Now the range, I want to start on the bottom at the lowest value. So I'm going to look for the lowest point of this graph. Now this graph kind of comes down here and comes to this little valley right here, but that's not the lowest point. That's not the lowest part of the graph. The lowest part of the graph is over here. It's down at this point. Oops. So I want this point to be my lower range. Now notice it's an open circle, so that means I need to choose a parenthesis, and I want to close it with this one. This one's for the top of the graph, this one's for the bottom. Then I'm going to go to the highest point. Yes, that's a peak, it comes to the top, but that's not the highest point. The highest point's over here. And now it's a closed circle, so now I want to use a square bracket. Okay, so now the same idea applies, except now it's kind of flipped vertically. I want to start with the lowest value. The lowest value down here, and again, we're talking about range. So it's range, we need to refer to the y values. The y value at the lowest point is negative 9. You could go up to this line and see that negative 7 is here, but that's an x value. We don't want that value. We want the y value. So I'm going to go to the right over to the y-axis, and I see that the lowest y value is negative 9. And it starts with a parenthesis because of an open circle. So I put parenthesis, negative 9, comma. Now we're going to go to the highest value. What's the highest value? Well, it's wherever I put that bracket on the top. And it was a closed circle, and it's at the y value of 3, and I put a bracket because it's a closed circle. Okay, so let me show you one more time. So now, again, domain, left to right, I'm going to start, what's the leftmost value? Okay, well, it's the leftmost point is this little point here. So I'm going to grab this square bracket because it's a closed dot, a solid dot. And then I'm going to go all the way to the right, and here's the rightmost point. That's also a solid dot, so I'm going to grab a bracket. Okay, now again, domain is your x value. So I'm going to look along this horizontal line to find the point to start with and end with. So here's where we start at the lowest value, which is negative 10. I line it up with the x-axis. I see negative 10. Type a bracket, negative 10, comma, then I go all the way to the right, and the largest value in the domain is positive 6. Now let's flip over to range. Now again, I'm looking for the lowest point first, because remember, range is vertical. We're talking about y values now. The lowest point is here at this little valley, not this dot. Yes, that's a circle, but they don't always end at a circle. I'm looking at the lowest part of the graph, which is this little valley. And again, I told you the only time you use parentheses is when you end up on a open circle, but that's not open circle. That's just a part of the graph. Now, again, this is above that point, this open circle, but that's not the highest point. The highest point is up over here to the right. That's our highest value. And again, it's not an open circle, so I'm going to close it with this bracket on the top. Now again, remember, range is the y value. So now I'm going to look on the y-axis for these points. The lowest value down here is negative 7. Start with a bracket, and then comma, and then I'm going to go to the top of the graph, which is right here, at positive 8. And again, end with a bracket. Okay, and that's how you do those.